You selfish, heartless person. How dare you betray your family like this? My mother's venomous words sliced through me like a blade as I stood in their dining room, my knuckles white against the doorknob, fighting to maintain my composure. My name is Rachel. I'm 35 years old and a successful real estate investor in Seattle, though I started my career as a corporate attorney. I don't broadcast my achievements, despise waste, and live well below my means. My colleagues jokingly call me the spreadsheet queen, but I wear the title proudly. Every dollar I've meticulously saved over the past 12 years is the foundation of the freedom I've finally earned, freedom that my family now wants to strip away from me. I'm the older of two sisters. My younger sister Caroline is 4 years my junior. If my childhood resembled blank pages shoved into a forgotten drawer, hers was a glossy magazine displayed prominently on the coffee table, vibrant, celebrated, and constantly admired. Caroline was always the golden child, flowing blonde hair, a captivating smile, and the ability to command attention whenever she entered a room. My parents never acknowledged their blatant favoritism, but it permeated every decision in our house like a suffocating perfume. From her first bike to her semester abroad in Paris, to her graduation celebration that rivaled a royal wedding, everything was for Caroline. For me, a modest dinner with a half-hearted "at least you graduated" toast was considered more than sufficient. Caroline married young, barely a year after college. But the marriage didn't last. Now divorced from Jason, a freelance designer with unpredictable income, she struggles to raise two children, Zoe who's 10 and Noah who's 7. Her small family currently crowds into a 2-bedroom apartment downtown where the constant noise of traffic and her weekly complaints about rent have become the soundtrack of our family gatherings. Caroline never fails to mention how exhausted she is juggling everything, how the kids desperately need more space, and how Seattle is slowly crushing their spirits. I never make comparisons, but the contrast is impossible to ignore. While she drowns in mounting debts, I maintain a stable and peaceful existence, despite living modestly. I rent a small apartment in the suburbs owned by the parents of my college roommate. They charge me half the market rate because they trust me implicitly. I've never given them reason not to. I work primarily from home. The peaceful routine of remote work suits me perfectly. There's something deeply satisfying about sitting at my desk, surrounded by finance and real estate investment books, a steaming cup of tea at my side, gazing out at trees that faithfully mark the passing seasons. My needs are simple. I've dreamed of a small house with a garden where I can grow herbs, listen to birdsong at daybreak, and perhaps bake bread on weekend mornings. I've spent 12 years saving for that dream. No dining out more than twice monthly. No shopping beyond absolute necessities. 0 credit card debt. Driving the same reliable car for years. I chose hiking in the Olympic Mountains over expensive vacations and designer clothes. Some call me an extreme minimalist, but I see it as the power to choose my own path. I've never openly resented my parents for favoring Caroline, but I learned young that I alone would shape my destiny. That's exactly why, when my dream home finally seemed within reach, I never anticipated the typhoon that followed, one called my family. Last week, after reviewing the balances in my 3 meticulously maintained accounts, property investment, emergency fund, and retirement, I knew with absolute certainty I was ready. Not maybe with a few more months of saving ready, but unquestionably prepared. I had enough for a substantial down payment, closing costs, and years of mortgage payments without compromising my carefully constructed lifestyle. That Sunday evening, I arrived at my parents' house for our weekly dinner, the usual gathering featuring my father's barbecue, my mother's garlic bread, and conversations that inevitably centered around Caroline's children, rising grocery prices, or my sister's latest household crisis. I hadn't intended to reveal my plans yet. My strategy was to finalize everything first, then share the news. But as I discreetly scrolled through property listings during the lull before dessert, a captivating image appeared, a charming wooden house with a welcoming porch and sunlit garden that made my heart race, and I couldn't suppress my smile. "What's got you grinning like that?" Caroline asked, setting down her glass with a curious look. I hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "I'm house hunting. Planning to buy within the month." The silence that followed was deafening, as if I'd confessed to a secret criminal life. My mother deliberately placed her fork down with an audible clink. "Buying a house? By yourself?" she asked, her voice dripping with disbelief and something darker I couldn't immediately identify. Yes, I replied firmly. I've been planning and saving for this for 12 years. I want somewhere peaceful, surrounded by nature, away from the constant noise and congestion of downtown. My father's eyebrow shot up in apparent shock. Caroline stared at me as though I'd announced plans to colonize Mars. Rachel, my mother said, her tone masquerading as concern while delivering a clear command, you can't just think about yourself like this. Purchasing a home is a significant commitment. You should have consulted with us first. I remained calm despite the familiar sting of her dismissal. Mom, I've been saving for 12 years. It's my money that I earned. I haven't borrowed a penny from anyone. I'm completely debt-free. Caroline interjected, her voice rising slightly. I'm not saying you shouldn't buy a house, but you need to consider the future. A house should accommodate family, not just one person living alone forever. And exactly who are you suggesting should live there besides me? I asked, my tone light despite the warning bells clanging in my mind. No one answered directly, but the meaningful glances exchanged between my mother and Caroline sent ice through my veins. Their silence spoke volumes about plans they'd already made, for my house, for my future, for my life. The following evening, while reviewing legal documents for my mortgage application, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Just spoke with Barbara from church. There's this stunning house in Cedar Ridge, 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, enormous backyard perfect for children to play. Sending you the listing now. Within minutes, Caroline flooded my phone with messages. You need to see this one. Top-rated school district, walking distance to shops. Even has a dedicated home office. If you bought this place, we could visit all the time. The kids would love it. I studied the images of the sprawling living room, the restaurant-grade kitchen with dual refrigerators, and felt my stomach tighten. Thanks for thinking of me, but I'm looking for something considerably smaller and more secluded. Caroline's response was a single, demanding word, why? I chose not to engage further. 3 days later during my lunch break, my mother called, her voice bubbling with poorly concealed excitement. Sweetheart. I just toured the Westfield house on Maple Street. The owners are relocating next month and slashing the price. The master suite has a private balcony, and there are 2 additional bedrooms, absolutely perfect for children. You simply must see it. I closed my eyes, counting silently to 5 before responding as diplomatically as possible. Mom, I genuinely don't need that much space. I don't have children, and I'm not planning to have anyone move in with me. You might change your mind someday, she argued with practiced persistence. And even if you don't, Caroline and the kids could stay over on weekends. They desperately need more space. That apartment is suffocating them. That's when everything crystallized with stunning clarity. All the pieces snapped into place, the meaningful glances at dinner, the family-oriented house listings, the emphasis on school districts. None of this was coincidental. They weren't merely suggesting I buy a house. They expected me to purchase a home for my sister and her children. And I realized with absolute certainty that if I remained silent now, if I acquiesced simply to maintain peace, I would be surrendering the most precious achievement of my adult life, my hard-earned independence. I signed the contract for my dream home on a brilliant April morning, a charming 2-bedroom wooden house nestled among towering pines north of Everett, approximately a 45-minute drive from downtown Seattle. The property already featured a generous backyard, a small greenhouse, and established raised garden beds that made my heart swell with possibility. As I stood on the porch accepting the keys from the previous owner, tears threatened, not from sentimentality, but from the profound realization that for the first time, I was truly directing my own life. No interference, no external expectations. I kept my purchase secret all week, planning to share the news at Saturday's family dinner as a joyful announcement. I foolishly imagined my father's proud smile, perhaps even a congratulatory hug from my mother. But when I finally said, I bought a house, the room fell into a stunned silence that felt like concrete hardening around me. Caroline rigidly placed her wineglass down, her eyes boring into mine. You bought it. You've already signed all the paperwork? I nodded, offering a small smile despite the tension crackling in the air. Yes, last week. I'm moving in at the end of the month. My mother's spine straightened as she pressed her hand to her chest, her expression suggesting I'd announced a terminal illness rather than a home purchase. How could you possibly make such a monumental decision without consulting us? You knew we've been house hunting for you. We. I frowned, an icy foreboding creeping down my spine. What exactly do you mean by we? Caroline looked up, her face eerily expressionless. Jason and I. We've planned everything. The house Mom selected is in the district with the best elementary school. Zoe and Noah would each have their own bedroom. You don't need all that space living alone, it's the perfect arrangement. I couldn't help the incredulous laugh that escaped me. Wait. You're all discussing this house as if I would purchase it specifically so your entire family could move in. My father deliberately set down his fork, his voice low but unyielding. Rachel, you're the only financially stable member of this family right now. Supporting each other is what families do. I turned to my mother, searching her face. You believe this too? Her eyes confirmed everything. You live alone, work remotely, have a secure income. Caroline is drowning in that cramped apartment. The children need space to grow. If you truly cared about your sister, then I should sacrifice my dream to finance someone else's life? I interrupted, my voice rough with barely contained rage. No one responded. Jason, who had remained silent throughout dinner, shifted uncomfortably as if he'd been reluctantly dragged into a scheme he didn't fully support. I could renovate whatever you buy, Rachel, he offered weakly. If it's that 4-bedroom house, I could transform it into the perfect setup. Free of charge. I turned to Caroline, 12 years of suppressed frustration fueling my words. You know what astounds me? I genuinely thought you'd at least have the decency to ask me directly, not assume, not orchestrate plans behind my back. I didn't think I needed to ask, Caroline shrugged dismissively. You're my sister. You're financially secure. I'm struggling. You have the stability I've never managed to achieve. I pushed my chair back and stood, my decision crystallizing with each heartbeat. None of you ever considered what I wanted. And now that I've finally created something I spent 12 years meticulously building, you're all looking at me like I'm heartless for not simply handing it over to the family. You're betraying us, Rachel, my mother declared, her voice sharp as a prosecutor's. Barbara Westfield was willing to reduce the price significantly. Perfect house, excellent neighborhood. We've all been planning for weeks, just waiting for your approval. I stood motionless, surveying the table, accusations in one face, entitlement in another, silent disappointment in the rest. Not once had anyone asked, Rachel, what would make you happy? What do you want? I didn't buy a house to provide accommodation for someone else, I stated with deliberate calm. I bought it because I wanted a home that was truly mine, a life I chose for myself. You were all profoundly mistaken to believe you could claim it without even asking. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Behind me, Caroline called out, You're destroying this family over a house. I paused, my hand on the doorknob. This has nothing to do with the house. It's about finally being mature enough to recognize who should be living my life and who shouldn't. I stepped outside without a backward glance. The evening air was brisk, but I felt warmer than I had in years because, for the first time, I wasn't seeking permission to exist on my own terms. I returned to my apartment in a daze, as if emerging from a battlefield. The door closed behind me with a hollow thud, sealing me off from the accusations, hostile stares, and palpable disappointment that had permeated that dinner table. I dropped my bag to the floor, not bothering with the lights. In the shadowy darkness, I stood frozen, my chest a void as though something fundamental had collapsed without warning. My phone began vibrating less than 20 minutes later. First came my mother, 3 consecutive missed calls followed by a lengthy message, You need to come back to reality, Rachel. Family is family. This isn't some childish game. Don't let your arrogance destroy everything we've built. Then my father, Call me immediately. I placed the phone face down without responding. The screen continued illuminating the room, a persistent reminder that I had disrupted their carefully constructed version of normal. But what exactly was normal about this situation? Me perpetually serving as the safety net for someone else's choices. I finally switched on the lights. The warm glow filled my modest, meticulously organized apartment, my home for over 6 years, secured through the generosity of my college friends' parents. What once felt like a sanctuary now seemed merely transitional, a waiting room before my real life could begin. The phone buzzed relentlessly. Now Caroline, how can you be so heartless? My children are innocent in this. I thought you understood our situation. Clearly you only care about yourself. I leaned back, a controlled fury building inside me. They labeled me selfish. They declared that purchasing a modest home with my own hard-earned money after 12 years of sacrifice was somehow a betrayal. But throughout those years, had anyone ever inquired about my desires? Had anyone ever truly seen my sacrifices or acknowledged my discipline? At age 11, Caroline attended prestigious dance academies. I was enrolled in advanced mathematics courses because you're naturally gifted, don't waste it. At 17, Caroline received a brand new Audi for college. I inherited Dad's decade-old Honda with a dismissive "it's reliable enough, don't complain." At 20, she attended an expensive private university, fully financed by our parents. I worked 30 hours weekly while carrying a full course load just to afford community college tuition. And now, having finally created something meaningful for myself, they viewed it merely as an asset they could appropriate to benefit their perpetual favorite. My phone illuminated again. "Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, Rachel, I heard what happened. Your mother is devastated. Don't tear apart your family over a temporary rebellious phase." Then Aunt Margaret, "You were always the stubborn one, even as a little girl. Your mother always said so. Remember that stubbornness leads to isolation." The suffocation was becoming unbearable. The prospect of solitude was infinitely less terrifying than being surrounded by people who believed they had the right to commandeer my life. For the first time in 12 years, I powered off my phone completely. I needed absolute silence, no familiar manipulative voices, no unspoken accusations, no guilt cunningly embedded in every seemingly concerned word. The following morning, I rose early, brewed strong coffee, and watched golden sunlight stream through my windows. My path forward crystallized with perfect clarity. I would relocate to my new home within 2 weeks. I would share my address exclusively with my attorney, the moving company, and 3 trusted friends who had offered only understanding and support without judgment. I methodically arranged the internet transfer, submitted the moving company deposit, and created a detailed schedule to pack each item, each book, each small dream I had carefully preserved over the years. That evening, an anonymous email arrived titled "Family Shouldn't Be Abandoned Over Money." I didn't need to open it to identify the sender. I composed a brief reply: "This has never been about money. It's about creating boundaries in my life and not accommodating those who refuse to respect them." I sent it and closed my laptop with finality. That night, I experienced the most restful sleep I'd had in years. I moved on a crisp Monday morning. The moving truck arrived precisely on schedule, as efficient as promised in their reviews. I deliberately chose a weekday. Everyone would be occupied with work or children's activities. Nobody would have time to interfere, though I had taken additional precautions, changing my phone number, deactivating all social media accounts, and redirecting all correspondence to my new address. I craved complete separation. Not from fear they would pursue me, but because I no longer wanted their presence in my carefully constructed sanctuary. My charming house on a tree-lined street in Everett, approximately 45 minutes from Seattle, was the first place I'd entered and experienced genuine, profound peace. No one questioning who might move in with me. No one evaluating whether the living room could accommodate family gatherings. Just the gentle rustle of pine trees, sunlight dancing across hardwood floors, and the rejuvenating scent of fresh air with each breath. I devoted that first week to unpacking, cleaning, and arranging everything precisely to my specifications. No one prevented me from painting my office a rich olive green. No one criticized me for wasting money on a sophisticated tomato trellis in the backyard. For the first time, I purchased a beautiful patio set solely for my morning tea rituals, without the obligatory justification of "for when guests visit." I joined the local gardening society within days of settling in. The first gathering was at Eleanor's residence, a distinguished attorney in her 50s with an impeccable lavender garden and welcoming demeanor. No one pried into my background. Their only concerns were which herbs I planned to cultivate, my experience with pruning techniques, and whether I'd participate in their seasonal seed exchange program. I also met Daniel, a successful real estate developer approximately my age. He initially visited to help reconfigure my irrigation system and trim back overgrown branches blocking sunlight from my herb garden. Our conversations rarely touched on family matters, which felt surprisingly liberating. As we discussed soil composition, optimal sun exposure, and effective wildlife deterrence, I gradually rediscovered my voice, naturally, without the pressure of judgment. My professional life flourished as never before. Working remotely, free from the constant stream of passive-aggressive communications and stress-inducing family demands, my productivity and creativity soared. A comprehensive investment strategy I developed for a significant client received approval within days, an unprecedented achievement. My project manager, Karen, personally called to congratulate me, announcing both a substantial raise and a request to mentor new team members. For the first time in my life, I was recognized not merely for my performance, but for who I truly was. Each Saturday morning, I cycled to the local farmers market, selected fresh produce, and engaged in pleasant conversations with regular vendors. Once, I helped a young girl identify the specific onion variety her mother had noted on their shopping list. Later, her mother invited me to join their community book discussion group at the library. I accepted without hesitation. No one there knew I'd been branded heartless for refusing to surrender my hard-earned home to my sister. They simply knew me as Rachel, the woman with thriving herb gardens and unexpectedly sophisticated literary preferences. Occasionally, I glimpsed photos of Caroline or my mother through mutual connections social media, vague references to selfish relatives or images of the children in their cramped quarters with captions like making the best of difficult circumstances. I learned to scroll past without reaction beyond mild annoyance, having finally liberated myself from craving their approval. One crisp autumn afternoon, while organizing seed packets for the coming spring by my front window, the doorbell rang. Expecting Daniel or Eleanor, I peered through the peephole and felt my body freeze. Caroline. Her hair hastily secured in a messy ponytail, dark circles beneath her eyes, clutching a worn tote bag. Behind her stood Zoe and Noah, noticeably thinner than when I'd last seen them. All three remained silent, as if uncertain of their right to be there. I opened the door without speaking. Cold air rushed in with Caroline's hesitant exhalation. I wasn't sure if I still had knocking privileges, she said, her voice containing no accusation, only profound exhaustion. I neither invited them in nor turned them away. We stood in tense silence until Zoe whispered, "Aunt Rachel, Mommy said if we behaved, we could see your flower garden." I crouched to her level and gently brushed her hair. "I just planted white chrysanthemums near the fountain. Would you like to see them?" She nodded, and with that simple exchange, they entered, not as welcome guests, but as individuals who had forfeited their automatic right to my space yet somehow earned one final opportunity. Caroline offered no immediate apology. We drank tea in silence, watching the children cautiously explore the garden as if conscious they might disturb the fragile peace surrounding us. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely audible above the autumn breeze. "I always assumed you'd continue accepting whatever situation was handed to you, just like before. Like Mom conditioned us to believe. But you've proven stronger than all of us combined." I regarded her not as the perpetually favored child, but as a mother gradually confronting her limitations. "It's not about strength," I replied. "It's about refusing to be treated as a convenient solution to everyone else's problems." Caroline nodded, her eyes reddened. "I was wrong to believe our blood relation entitled me to insert myself into your life without permission or consideration." I neither expressed forgiveness nor continued accusations. Everything essential had already been communicated through my actions, though I knew the memories would remain. 3 weeks later, I took Zoe and Noah to the community book festival. As the children eagerly explored the children's section, I noticed Daniel supervising an art workshop beneath a sprawling maple tree. Noah approached him asking about watercolor techniques, while Zoe joined the activity as though she'd always belonged there. Daniel caught my eye and smiled with genuine warmth. "These two appear completely at home here, don't they?" I nodded. "They seem to have discovered their own peaceful corner." He asked no further questions. No one in my new community questioned my past anymore. They focused solely on who I was becoming each day. I began to understand that my surroundings represented far more than mere property. Every cultivated herb, each vegetable bed, every carefully selected book on my shelves formed integral pieces of the life I had constructed with deliberate intention, not for others' benefit, but for myself and those I consciously chose to welcome. Family, I realized, transcends mere genetic connection. True family comprises those who respect your boundaries, who request permission before claiming space in your heart, who never mistake your kindness for perpetual obligation. Eleanor invited me to accompany her to the upcoming winter celebration. The library reading group unanimously selected my home for next month's discussion. And Daniel? Though never overly expressive, he occasionally left baskets of freshly harvested oranges at my doorstep with simple notes, picked at sunrise. Enjoy fresh juice with your morning coffee. Each small gesture brought a smile to my face and a profound sense of contentment I had never before experienced. One evening, while finalizing an investment prospectus for a major client, my phone illuminated with a message from Caroline. I've secured 3 job interviews next week. Not asking for anything, just wanted you to know I'm supporting myself now. Thank you for not completely shutting me out despite everything. I didn't immediately respond. Instead, I gazed out at my meticulously cultivated garden bathed in soft moonlight. The peace I felt was no longer a fleeting luxury but the direct result of honoring my boundaries, a choice I knew with absolute certainty had been correct. Family connections may be established through blood, but the most profound and enduring relationships develop through conscious choice, mutual respect, and authentic consideration. 7 days later, I received an email from our HR department. We're currently evaluating applicants for the new financial literacy program. One candidate, Caroline Marks, included a reference letter mentioning guidance from an independent real estate investment expert during her professional transition. We were surprised to discover that expert is you. I stared at the screen, genuinely astonished. Caroline's initiative was unexpected. Even more surprising, she had quoted an article from my professional blog. Everyone deserves an opportunity to rebuild, but the first step toward genuine change must be taken independently. Caroline hadn't requested assistance or asked me to leverage my professional connections. She had chosen a more challenging path, demonstrating her evolution through concrete actions rather than empty promises. That evening, returning from my book club meeting, I discovered a small note secured to my garden gate. Aunt Rachel, I helped Mom prepare her interview materials. She's working really hard to change, just like you always did. She's still terrible at making that special tea you showed us, but I'm teaching her properly. P.S. Did you plant those purple flowers we talked about? It was Zoe's handwriting, childishly uneven yet heartfelt, unexpectedly touching something deep within me. I settled on my porch steps, watching autumn leaves dance in the crisp evening breeze. Though I remained dried, something within me subtly shifted, like ice gradually yielding to the first tentative rays of spring sunshine after an interminable winter. None of us achieves perfection, but we can evolve, not to satisfy others' expectations, but because we recognize the necessity of becoming better versions of ourselves. 3 weeks later, Caroline formally began the corporate financial literacy program. She entered the same building where I consulted, not as Rachel's sister but as her own person with independent value. For the first time, we exchanged professional nods across the lobby, a silent acknowledgement that seemed to communicate, "Thank you for teaching me that respect must be earned, not demanded through family obligation." That evening, Daniel arrived with a basket of freshly harvested oranges and several sprigs of dried herbs from his greenhouse. No accompanying message, no explanations required, simply the reassuring presence of someone who never needed my complete history to value my present self. I arranged the fruit in my favorite bowl, brewed a pot of herbal tea, and opened the windows wide. The mingled scents of fertile soil, autumn air, and thriving herbs from my garden infused each breath with contentment. While the future remains unwritten, one certainty guides me forward: I no longer exist to fulfill others' expectations. I live authentically, opening my door only to those who approach with genuine respect. Because sometimes, the most profound resolution isn't found in dramatic reconciliations or permanent separations, but in that tranquil moment when you can look at someone without resentment, even from a respectful distance, and feel nothing but the quiet satisfaction of standing firmly in your own truth.